Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining us for today's milestone event, our 50th Lunchtime Lightning Talks. It's really come around quick, I think. Our speakers today are all people who have supported us in a number of our communities, including the London Java community, Front Engineers and our aspiring women's groups. So we're really pleased to have a mix of people today for this milestone event. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Abby and I work with Barry Cranford, who is the founder of the communities I've already mentioned. We currently run, as a company, RecWorks, we run approximately 15 different tech communities. So if you want to know more about any of those, please do get in touch with myself or Barry or Helen Lewis, and we'll be able to tell you about each of those different communities and get you linked in. But RecWorks ourselves, we are a tech recruitment company with a massive difference. So as a company, we believe that recruitment really can be a force for good in the industry beyond purely placing people in jobs. We have a particular focus on learning, mentoring and personal development, and that's where these events and our communities come in. If people want to learn and others want to teach or share their knowledge, we are happy to connect you through our communities and events. We see this as giving back to those we've worked with in the past, but also paying it forward to those we hope to work with in the future. Earlier this year, our Meet a Mentor community made our 4,000th introduction, which we're super excited about, and we're really looking forward to when that turns into 5,000 introductions. As I've already said, we love to give opportunities for people to connect. And if you'd like to know more about any of our other communities, please do get in touch with myself, Barry or Helen, and we'll take it from there. The recording of today's session will be available on YouTube. I will put the link to the channel in the chat later on. But with no further ado, we have Helen starting us off for this afternoon's Lightning Talks. So take it away, Helen.
Hello, thank you. Right, let me share the screen. Everything's going to work fine because we already practiced that. All right, let me hit play. Awesome. Welcome, and thank you for inviting me for the 50th event. That's I can't believe it's 50th. Like I think I joined this program in the fairly early days of it. So I started doing I started with my first lightning talk. I must have been around September 2020, something like that. So I've kind of come through the program, and I'm going to fess up right now that I wrote this in Oslo Airport yesterday, which is potential proof that the program works, because I was speaking at Java Zone. So lightning talks, the shocking truths, and remember I wrote this in an airport, so that's why some of the slides are the way they are. First truth, fear. Fear is completely normal, and I pulled this one out specifically because fear for me is, I can still remember my first lightning talk. I was emotionally distressed, is a polite way of putting it. You know, tears, shouty, general, you know, throwing my toys out the pram, and like I can't do this, I'm not ready for this. But the reason I put this here is I want to point out that, at least in my experience, the fear gets easier. You're not, at least I don't think I wasn't as terrified this time around, even though I was on a stage and there were hundreds of people looking at me. It does actually get easier the more talks that you do. So fear is normal, but it gets easier. It definitely gets easier. Second one I want to point out is nerves. And I've separated this from fear because, for the good reason that the day you get on stage and you're not nervous, that's the day you should stop doing public speaking, because nerves are your superpower. Nerves mean you care. When you get on stage and you have nerves, that means I care. I care about my topic. I care about the audience. I care that you've all gifted me your time, and it's totally okay to be nervous. I have noticed the time to nerves, as I call it, has changed. It used to be kind of the night before, and now I get nervous when the audio and video guys are kind of trying to put my mic on and then drop the mic down the back of my top to click onto my jeans. That's when I get nervous and it all gets real. But nerves are normal. Embrace them. They are your superpower. Third truth, don't worry, it doesn't loop. third truth, you feel amazing afterwards. You get this wonderful natural high, right? You get this release of oxytocin once you've given your talk. You've got through the nerves, you've got through the anxiety, you've got through the fear, you've delivered your talk, you said thank you very much. Hopefully people are giving you a round of applause and you feel amazing. And that's something to really hold on to, because it's all too easy to get to the end of a talk and go, oh, thank God it's done. Whereas if you can hold on to onto that natural high and go, I did that and that was awesome and I'm really proud of myself, then again, it's a truth that I think sometimes we don't focus on. We focus on the nerves and the stress and the anxiety and the fear, and we forget how really very good you feel afterwards. Right, next one. This is the airport slide. You can get a little bit addicted in a good way, because you get that natural feeling that yay, I did it, and you meet people and people come up and talk to you afterwards, and people give you feedback on your talk. And this, every single conference I've done now, somebody has given me feedback that has allowed me to iterate on my talk and go, oh yeah, that's a good point, I'm going to change that and make that better, because I'm not really sure that worked. And the meeting people is really important as well, the networking. I'm quite a shy person, as it turns out, and one of the advantages of public speaking is you can get on stage, and when you finished your talk, people come and introduce themselves to you. You don't have to do the introducing, because you're wearing a speaker badge and people know who you are. And that's really cool and really helpful for networking and, you know, growing your community. Next truth, it can be a little bit cringy. We're not born good public speakers. I don't think we learn. It's a learned skill, it's a learned behavior, and it's a journey. So the lightning talks that you gave 2 years ago, if I was to look back at mine, I would probably cringe. In 2 years' time, I'm probably going to cringe at this one. But it is a journey. We live, we learn, we look back and we correct our mistakes and we tweak and we grow, right? It's okay, it's a journey. We all started writing Hello World and we're not born great speakers. So it's really good to accept that, acknowledge it, and be okay with the cringe. Okay, I think I'd had a glass of wine by the time I made this slide. Let me just move that out of the way for you if I can. Oh, no, I can't, fine. But yes, one of the huge advantages of public speaking is it helps you to stand out. A lot of us have the same skills, we've worked in the same place, we have the same qualifications, we have the same amount of experience, and we have similar aspirations and goals. Public speaking is a great way of elevating yourself in your career. It is by no means the only way, and you do not need to do public speaking to be a fantastic developer, absolutely not. But it is one way that you can choose, or you can progress to elevate yourself to a hiring manager when they've got a big stack of CVs in front of them. So to summarize, go do it, enjoy it. It's a really fun journey and the learning never stops. And yeah, I've certainly benefited hugely from this program, from my first lightning talk a couple of years ago to now speaking at international conferences, which blows my own mind. So yeah, if any of you out there are thinking, oh, maybe I'll do it, I'm not really sure, I would strongly encourage you to do it. Have fun, explore, accept you're not going to be amazing to start with. I'm definitely still not amazing, but I aspire to be better each and every time I give a talk. And that's it. Thanks for listening.
Fantastic, Helen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As Helen says, obviously starting your speaking journey, if that's something you want to look at, as it happens, RecWorks, we do have aspiring speakers groups, and we also have workshops. So if you want to know about them, just ping me a message later, and I can get you linked in with who you need to be linked in with for those. So next up, we have Edward. Over to you, Edward.
We're doing questions now, are we? Or?
Yeah, does anybody have any questions? Sorry.
Helen, I was curious, you mentioned that, when the microphone gets attached to you, then the nerves start ramping up just before you talk. If you'd be willing to share what kind of coping mechanisms you have in those moments, please and thank you.
And this is being recorded, isn't it? I have a few coping mechanisms. Always I go for a walk beforehand. I get outside. I went down to the seafront in Oslo just before my talk. So like about hour and a half before my talk started, I walked for about a mile all around the seafront, just getting air and getting cold, because you kind of, otherwise you're just sitting in the speaker's room and you're watching the clock countdown. When I'm presenting remotely, if it's a talk that I'm particularly nervous about, the press ups come out because in the privacy of my home I can do that. It might be a bit weird if I was actually at a conference. A little bit of meditation as well, 5 deep breaths, in, hold, out, hold. 5 deep breaths over 60 seconds is a great calmer as well. And then when you get on stage, it depends on the conference whether you walk on stage or kind of how they want to organize it. But as soon as you're on stage, before you start the welcome to my talk, tip your weight into your toes. So you're leaning into the audience that are staring back at you. It's a very small, imperceptible move, but it goes back to that flight or fright, that response. So you can actually, you're leaning into the fear rather than going, oh, I'm a prey animal and everybody's looking at me. So those are the techniques that I've found particularly helpful.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Fight or flight, see, I can say it now.
Good question.
Go for it.
I said good question.
Oh, good question. Another question. Okay.
I agree. Was great question. Does anybody else have any questions for Helen? Okay, in which case, definitely over to Edward now. Go for it. Thanks. Thank you so much for asking the question.
No worries. All right. Hello all, welcome to our group therapy session. Lightning Talk. My name is Edward and I'll be talking to you about anxiety, how I learned to harness it as a source of information on what can go wrong in my code and turn it into a superpower to stop bugs before they even happen. All right, let's dive in with a question. What is anxiety? Well, we've just heard Helen describe it a bit, but the NHS definition is a feeling of unease, such as worry or fear, that can be mild or severe. Now, it's perfectly normal to feel anxious at certain times. For instance, if you're just about to give a lightning talk, or if you're about to have an exam, or if you're pushing untested code to production. For roughly 95% of the UK population, this feeling passes naturally, and it doesn't interfere with their daily lives. Unfortunately, for the remaining 5% of the UK population, they can find it hard to control their worries or anxiety. They have general anxiety disorder, or GAD, and anxiety is so severe that it affects their daily lives, stopping them from doing even the most basic things. Now, if this sounds familiar to you, please seek help from a GP or doctor. But now that we know what anxiety is, let's discuss why we have anxiety. So, why do we have anxiety, and how is this giraffe going to help me explain it? The source of this image is James Clear on his post about the evolution of anxiety. Highly recommend you read it, but the TLDR is that anxiety is a biological mechanism that has evolved to keep us away from danger and to keep us alive. In the case of this giraffe, it looks pretty happy here, munching on leaves. However, it might feel anxious, triggering it to look around for lions. If it sees lions, it will get stressed, and that will motivate it to run away. Once it gets away, stress goes away, and it can happily munch leaves elsewhere. Now, this immediate feedback loop is a good thing. Anxiety is a good thing. It's your subconscious providing you with data that it thinks that you are about to die, and you have to react with a fight or flight reaction. Now, luckily for us, we generally don't face life or death scenarios in our code. Unluckily for us, our bodies haven't evolved a nuanced mechanism to give us this warning. That feeling of dread and raised heartbeat is the only way it can tell us, "Ah, lion," or "Ah, no pointer exception." Thus, whenever I feel anxious about my code, I remind myself, deep breaths, the chance that there are lions in my code base is very small. Now, we spoke about the theory. Let's work through some anxiety-driven development together. Here I've got some requirements for us in pseudocode. And what you can see is that we're asked to fetch a piece of data from an external API, transform that raw data, and persist it to our database. Straight off the bat, my anxiety is able to predict a plethora of problems. For instance, what if the API is down? What if our authentication fails? What if there's a network failure? What if our database goes down? Etc., etc., etc. It all comes flooding in. Take a breath. The trick is processing all that data and prioritizing what to deal with first, focusing on the most important pieces of that anxiety data and the things that are either most severe or most likely. Now, some of the problems I just mentioned, we could tackle them in a simple way. Like, yes, our external dependencies could fail, but we could just run the function again and it will recover when our external dependencies recover. It's not ideal, but it's a coping strategy. And now we can focus on what's more important and more immediate and impactful. Does our transform function actually do what we need it to do? Does it handle null fields in upstream? What if some arrays are empty? You're going to have to start questioning your assumptions on what you're receiving and control that. Now I can solve these problems and then deploy it. And this is an example of harnessing my anxiety to design robust code and not being paralyzed by worry or fear. Just keep making progress, deal with the problems one at a time. So, to summarize, anxiety is my body trying to keep me alive by giving me signals, and this is a good thing. It's on me to manage those signals. I'm not dying, and turn it into credible information. People might say, Edward, you don't seem anxious. How do you do it? And that's my secret. I'm always anxious. I embrace it as part of who I am, and I use it to make me better at predicting bugs in code before they will happen. Thank you all for listening. It's short and sweet. I just wanted to quickly invite you all to discuss more about this and any other topics you might be interested in a round-table event, which is happening on Saturday 27th. Ask Jade, Abby, or myself to provide details, and there will be pizza. If you do have any questions on this topic right now, I would love to hear them from you. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Edward. Does anybody have any questions?
Not a question so much as I just wanted to say thank you for being so vulnerable with that presentation. It was really helpful. Thank you.
Normalize talking about mental health.
Absolutely.
Edward, can I ask a question? I'm not sure if there's a simple answer.
All right, go for it.
Is there a way of deciding or knowing when anxiety is a problem rather than something that you can use to improve yourself or improve your situation?
Yes, of course. I find for my personal experience that if I'm just stuck in a loop of like, oh, what should I try this or try that, and even after a few minutes, I feel like, oh, my heart's going, or I'm stuttering. It's just like, I'm over anxious. Like, excuse me, I'm just going to take a second, breathe. Maybe like what Helen said, like go walk outside or just take a breath, and then come back to it. Usually it just helps me to talk to my pair. Just be like, I'm really worried about like the database failing. Like, do you think it's a problem? It's like, oh no, the database is rock solid. You don't have to worry about it. And even if it does, we have monitoring. It's just like, oh great, that's it. So either like helping yourself by spotting and acknowledging it, or if you can't help yourself, then seek help. There's no shame in it.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Excellent. So from 2 great talks into yet another great talk, we'll hand over to Nathalie for hers now. I'm really looking forward to hearing this one as well, so enjoy.
Okay. All right, let's share the screen and get going. Okay, can you see the screen? Cool. Right, so This isn't a go to boot camp in 3 months and you'll be where I am kind of talk. It was hard, and some days it still feels hard, but, and that's a very big but, oops, hold on, sorry, I couldn't get my clicker then. The payoff has proved that the hard work, the determination and the grit has been worth it, and I've doubled my earnings in just 3 years with a ton of opportunities ahead. So this is a whiz through my previous history and a look at how that experience has rocket fueled a career switch into tech. To reach where I am now, which is more than halfway through my 5th year in tech, currently working as a full stack developer at Byway and working my way to a senior level. So, okay, buckle up, here's part 1. I always scored high in logic problems at school and took O-level maths a year early, but back in the 80s, girls weren't encouraged to take computing, at least not where I was. So steered towards a creative route, I decided I wanted to art direct TV commercials. And after taking A-level art and a 1-year foundation to prep for uni, unfortunately, I couldn't get onto a degree course. This was before media studies was a thing, and wanting to work in advertising was apparently a nail in my coffin. I was told I was overqualified and shown the exit. So I wrote to as many ad agencies as I could, booked some appointments, took the train myself and my portfolio off to London to get advice. And Sachi and Sachi pointed me in the direction of Watford College to team up with a copywriter. Turns out I didn't want to work with a copywriter, but I did really enjoy the graphics course, and the outcome was a BTEC H&D in graphics design. My point? Well, you don't need to come from a traditional computer science background or even any degree background. What served me well is that stubborn determination or pig-headedness, or call it what you will, but I wouldn't take no for an answer, and I always try and find another way in. You might not end up heading in the direction intended, but sometimes these detours turn out to be pretty enjoyable scenic routes. So the first job was working as a graphic designer for printers up north, producing football and rugby programmes. And I soon headed back down to London to work as a graphic designer, contracting for various ad agencies up until my late 20s. And this is where I turned off the career highway at the junction of marriage and kids. The next decade or so was parked up as a work from home mum, working on a family run fish tank business. Completely unrelated to any previous experience doing back office work, running the books, dealing with staff, customers, VAT inspections. So how did tech come into it? Well, we needed to get online. A small home business with no budget. I decided to use the graphics knowledge, learn HTML and CSS and build websites. It upskilled the graphics qualifications while I was out of the job market, and that's how I got the coding bug. I spent more and more hours practicing building stuff. Coding had become a full-time hobby to the point where I started to build websites for friends and local businesses, and late one afternoon, pressing submit minutes within the closing deadline, literally, I nominated my work in the Kent Web Awards and bagged a gold and silver for web design. Just as well, because it turns out I hated fish too, and with the kids less dependent now, I needed a change of career. Coding was the route I wanted to take, and the awards gave me the validation that I needed, because let's be honest, learning all of this on your own, off the internet, you never know if you're good enough. But how to get back on that road when everything moves so damn fast? Late one night, watching BBC Girls Can Code, I decided I wanted in on the tech startup scene. No idea how to do this, so I formed my own tech startup. Another last minute submission, which was actually past the deadline this time, and I got myself onto the Google Campus for Mum startup program in London. And this led to an invite to go and pitch out in Milan at a food tech summit, where a judge asked me that if I could write HTML and CSS, why was I outsourcing the building of the app to a dev I met at campus when I should be stepping up to become the technical co-founder? Well, that was a good question. So I headed off in the direction of a 9-week coding bootcamp with Luagan and was in their first London cohort. It was a steep, painful uphill climb, and I remember the instructor telling me that it's not called bootcamp for nothing. But it taught me how to learn again. And that's a skill I've been using ever since. I often still feel the burn of the climb even now. Tech moves at an incredible speed and the learning never stops. And that doesn't change no matter how senior you get. There were still tons to learn, but 6 months after boot camp, I had a very clunky but functioning MVP for the startup. And the startup journey, well, that didn't go well either, but it did give me a very good plan B. I'd felt the adrenaline buzz of just how good coding full-time is. And the best way to get better at coding is go and get a job as a developer. And that clunky app gave me a really good side project to discuss at interview. So that's my background outlined. And how has that transferred across exactly to push me back out in the fast lane in a new career? I want to stress that getting that first job in tech was not easy. With a home business that had run its course, financial pressures were mounting, and after a 9-month hard slog, I was just 2 weeks away from giving up and going to get any job I could. I was 48, and on paper, I'd not only parked up for over 2 decades, in fact, my career bus was nothing more than a rusty old bucket. I didn't understand the value of the experience that I had, and recruiters didn't help me either. They told me I was too much of a risk or a gamble, and that I had no experience of modern ways of working. And I'm partly to blame there because I hid my experience outside of my coding side projects. I guess I was worried that I might be considered overqualified again, given my age applying for a junior role. But leaning on that graphics background and the startup hustle, I thought I'd play on that gamble theme and rebranded myself as a wildcard. And that paid off, and I landed my first role as a junior full stack developer. And it only took me 3 months to put my foot on the gas and move out in the fast lane. I got a pay rise because actually, although it was my first position as a developer, I clearly wasn't a junior. I had design skills I could put to good use. I could take autonomy in handling graphics works from the offset. And interestingly, whilst I might feel out of my depth sometimes in code, I've noticed that some of the engineers around me feel just as uncomfortable about design too. Both involve a level of creativity, but we do think differently. So I act as an interpreter. I can converse in both the language of design and technical speak, and that's a highly valued skill. Startup life was tough, and I managed to burn myself out in the process. But being a startup founder, alongside the experience of running a business with my husband, I'm used to working out product fit. I value user feedback, and I can keep an eye on the competition and embrace when it's time to make a pivot. I'm used to the hustle, selling the vision or telling the story to get buy-in to that vision. It's no different really to the skills you learn through relationships with your partner or friends. You know, we all subtly sow the seeds of an idea and think it was their idea in the first place. Or as a parent, you persuade your kids to get up out the door on time because there might be a happy meal at the end of it if they do. And okay, that's maybe bribery, so not the best example, but as the kids have got older, I've learned patience, to think before reacting, to listen rather than shout. And it's been a lesson well learned, particularly if an outcome isn't what I wanted, or if I don't agree with the direction the team's moving in, then I can sit back and rationalise and reframe an idea to negotiate, and then come in and put a stronger case forward so I can find my voice. And public speaking was a big part of startup life, constantly having to hone that pitch. It was also a requirement of contract of my first developer role. I was expected to blog and speak about my progress, and I'm glad I was pushed to do that because it boosts confidence, it gives visibility, and that's really important if you do want to progress. It can help cement your learnings, especially if you present back to your team. And if you can turn that into workshops or start mentoring colleagues to share that knowledge, and that's even better. But this doesn't stop imposter syndrome. I often still feel like a beginner again at the start of a new project, and I'm pretty sure I'll feel the same when I start to prep for the next interview, even if that's for internal progression to the next step up. There's always going to be more to learn, but that's what makes it such an interesting ride. And I did have a sheet with loads more examples, but hopefully this gives you an idea of just how valuable previous experience can be. So what about you? You might think you'd be starting from the bottom again, but no, you've got a whole heap of experience that comes with you and your CV. And if you can apply that outside experience, you've got a great earning potential. Companies are keen to up their diversity intake, and this does include diversity of background and experience too. And as for career progression, well, there's a huge, huge choice. Thanks.
Brilliant, Nathalie. Thank you so much. Yeah, lots of applause happening, as I'm sure you can see. Does anybody have any questions?
I was curious, Nathalie, about what you said about marketing yourself as a wild card, and in retrospect, like how would you advise others to market themselves in a similar situation?
It is just a lot of it was listening to what people were telling me and then trying to work out, well, how can I use that to my advantage and reframe things, and just keep taking on that feedback to make small tweaks all along the way. And my CV went through so many iterations, and you know, each time it'd be, okay, I need to tweak this bit or tweak that bit, just listening to what impression they were getting, and then working out, well, how to answer that and tackle that and make myself seem, okay, if that's their fears, how can I address that and make myself be the candidate that they want to employ.
Great advice, thank you.
Any other questions for Nathalie? Alex has, go for it.
Oh yeah, thanks Nathalie, great talk. I was wondering, please don't treat this as a criticism, it is just a question. So you seem very experienced at giving talks, and I noticed that you've spoken at Skills Matter, which I've done once at a conference. That was my sole conference talk, was at Skills Matter in London. So what is it you were hoping to get from today? What are you hoping to practice anything in particular, or would you just because you were asked, or what?
Yeah, I was asked to do it, but I'm trying to get back in the habit of doing talks again. And this is one topic because I've started doing some mentoring as well. And it tends to be people who want to do the career change. And this is a talk that I've been asked to maybe expand and speak more about, to show people how to make the most of what they have got. So yeah, it's just practice more than anything to
I was thinking there's somebody else I know who needs to see your talk soon as possible, so
yeah,
whenever the recording comes out I'll point them at it. So,
yeah, but that's why people keep asking, so I thought I'd better dust this off, give it another go, and then maybe look at expanding it into a bigger talk.
That would be great, and when you do, please let us know. We'll have you do a bigger talk for us. Carly's nodding with me as well, so we're all on board. We're all on board. It's great. Thank you so much, Nathalie. That's brilliant. So last but not least today, because one of our speakers has unfortunately not been able to turn up, but that is okay because we've still had a wealth of amazing speakers so far. And last but not least, we have Alex.
So far,
well, I already know that you're great as well, so we're fine. Carry on. Over to you, Alex.
okay, let's see if I can share this screen. Hi folks, can you see my screen? Just going to move that over there. Right, okay, so I do feel a bit bad in some ways, because after so many positive talks, I'm now going to give a negative talk. It's me complaining about something, and I don't know how many of you will actually have seen this. So let's get on with it and see what we can do. Right, so I'm really pleased to have been invited to come and give a talk at the 50th. I have been a designer of big data systems for about 10 years now, and so I keep a good eye out for the different systems that different companies are offering, and this talk is for anybody who might be involved in the collating data for reports or data science or pretty much anything like that. So it's whinging about the modern data stack. Now, what is the modern data stack? I'm going to try and skip the detail here if possible, but at the center it's usually some company's cloud data warehouse, and they are usually partnering with a number of other companies. So there's typically a company that helps get data into the system, company that gets, with usually the same software, gets data out, another company is involved in data science, another company is involved in report generation. You get the idea. So what's my problem with it? Well, the very first thing is that it's not a stack. Let me see if I can demonstrate what a typical stack might look like. So the most famous, I think, in the world was the LAMP stack. Linux, Apache, MySQL, and Perl. Yes, I am that old. And what we did was that Linux was the operating system, Apache HTTP acted as a web server that ran on Linux, MySQL was the database that ran on Linux, Perl or PHP or Python ran in the HTTP web server and accessed MySQL. And what that gave you was a functioning website. You still had to program it and design it and all those good things as well. But you quite clearly see there's a stack. Now, this is the traditional data stack. This is what they're trying to say they are better than or different from. So Hadoop at the bottom mainly consisted of HDFS for storage and Yarn for distributed compute. And you typically had your ETL data processing on top of that. I can explain why that has flaws, but that would take me several days. So now, what's the other problem? Everyone has their own. So straight away, you can see from here that I've got company X, company, oh, W starts before X, doesn't it? We have company Y, company Z, and there's loads of options for these. I'm going to try and avoid mentioning any names right now, just in case I want to work with them in the future. But there is no one modern data stack. It's kind of just like a pick one from here, pick one from there, pick one from there. So I'm almost, it really feels like it's just work with my partners rather than any particular technical reason for it. So this is the final point I'm trying to make, which is to use a maturity model instead. Now, I'm not sure how well I can explain this architectural concept, but the idea would be that you have different criteria for saying whether you as a company or organization are doing things the old way or doing things the new way or somewhere in between. And the old way doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. There could be good reasons for you doing it the old way. And likewise, doing it the new way doesn't automatically mean that it's better than the old way. So the typical example was that we used to put computers in a data center, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why that's cheaper. But at the same time, you've got to have people to look after it. That's expensive. You worry about how to replace hardware. That's difficult. And so typically you might move to a cloud environment and install things on cloud machines, or you might use a cloud company that provides you with a service. So there are reasons for doing all of these three things, but you could position yourself on this particular maturity scale. I'm not going to go through all the other ones, but you need to think about data governance now, to do with making sure that the right people get access to the data and the wrong people don't, and that they get to do the right things. You might think about data operations, which is a variant of DevOps, to make sure that the data comes to the people who need it at the right time. And so on and so on. So the last one would be that when you built a data pipeline, it used to require programmers, and then we had a whole industry expertise of data engineering, and the newest, most preferable way is self-service, so the business people get to build their pipelines themselves. So that's my rant. Modern data stack doesn't really mean anything. It's just a marketing term. You should think about, instead, think about a maturity model to think about what you need and what you don't need. I think that's my 5 minutes up. Thank you very much. Do I have any questions? Everybody's gone silent.
We've got a question in the chat. What is ML Ops, please?
So ML is machine learning. And so with machine learning, you typically have two phases. You have a training phase where you're getting lots of data and performing statistics on it using machine learning algorithms, blah, blah, blah. And also an execution phase where you take the trained model and use it in production. And both of those require a certain level of DevOps. So with the training phase, you need to make sure that you've got the right data, repeatedly available to you, and sometimes that data changes, so you may need to retrain it every day or every month or every hour, I don't know. And likewise, once you've trained your model, you then need to deploy it in a reliable way. You don't want to be doing this manually. I remember a few years ago, I worked with one famous company that advertises on the telly. I won't tell you who. And they did this maths once every month or 2 or 3. And they really wanted to move to doing that maths every day, because it would save them an awful lot of money. Thanks for the question. That's actually quite helpful. Who's next?
Yes.
Anything else? I'll pass it back to you, Abby. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Alex. I know, like you said at the start, you had a bit of a more negative or rant kind of talk compared with the more positive ones we started with. But actually, for me, it's still fascinating and interesting to hear your thoughts, especially on just that one topic in such a short space of time to be able to speak as well. I thought you were very clear and concise, so thank you.
Yeah,
it's great.
Sometimes companies like to say things and come up with a new phrase to say, aren't we brilliant and new? We do this really new, cool thing. And it's quite often just hype and marketing. And you look at it in detail, you say, okay, well, why do I want to do things this way? What's the benefit for me and my company? Rather than just simply saying, oh, just use my software, use my friend's software. But, no. Cool. Thank you, Mark.
Excellent. So I am just going to put the link for the recording into the chat for you all. So I believe it will go onto the LJC YouTube channel. So if you would like the recording, that's the link. You can find it on probably mid next week. It should be on there for you. So, and all that is left for me to say at this point is thank you so much to Helen, Edward, Nathalie and Alex for your talks today. They've been great. Really
Abby,
great to hear from you.
I've got a quick question, if that's all right.
Sure.
So if people have any feedback on things that we did well or things that we didn't do very well, maybe somebody doesn't like my t-shirt or something like that, can people give us feedback somehow? Should we contact you or?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to contact me and I can pass that on, that's absolutely fine. If you find me on LinkedIn, my name is as you see it on the screen, so that's probably the easiest way to find me. If you've got any feedback for any of the speakers, I know they all appreciate hearing your thoughts. So yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, we are doing this to improve. We're not. It's all good practice, and you know, if people are doing it for the first time, you know, we want to hear you as well.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're nervous about starting your speaking journey and you don't know where to go, RecWorks do run 2 aspiring speakers groups. We have aspiring speakers and aspiring women speakers. We also have workshops available for you on how to write a talk from scratch in 15 minutes. So if you are interested in that, again, ping me a message and I'll link you up with the right people to be able to come to those. But all that's left for me now is to say thank you so much to those of you who've spoken this afternoon. It's been really great to hear from you all. Thank you to everybody who's joined us. It's always great to see you. Lovely to see some faces and names I know and some I don't. That's always a highlight for me. And we really look forward to seeing you at our next Lightning Talk session. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.